Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online Alicization anime review. This one's going to be for episode 44, which is called The Night Sky Sword. So yeah, this was basically our sort of finale episode. You'll probably know that there are still 3 episodes to come, I believe, but in essence, this was our final fight. Kirito defeats Gabriel Miller. It's over, it seems like. Except, of course, the big twist of like, oh, Kirito and Asuna are now stuck in the underworld for 200 years. And even though it's only going to be like 5 minutes in the real world, because of the maximum acceleration phase, it's going to be for them 200 years in the game. So that's the big sort of twist at the end. So you may be wondering then, like, what, 3 episodes left? How do we cover all this? Like, what actually happens from here on out? And obviously the structure of the book is kind of very different, and so we still have a lot of stuff on the ocean turtle to figure out, because while there's so much action happening in the game, and it seems like, okay, basically all of the players except Kirito and Asuna have logged out at this point, we still have everyone on the ocean turtle to deal with, and the fact that there is still the threat of like military action happening there. So we have to come back to that quite heavily. And that's going to be, I suppose, most of the next episode. But then, this last volume of Alicization has quite a lengthy epilogue, which I suppose is what the last 2 episodes are going to have to be. We'll see exactly how they approach using the time that they have left. But 2 episodes realistically is probably what's needed for the epilogue, especially if they might want to maybe slightly extend out one specific section of it. But again, we don't want to really get into spoilers for stuff that hasn't been covered yet within the anime. So anyway, let's get to discussing this episode. This was very interesting in that they devoted basically the whole episode to Kirito versus Gabriel Miller. And that was exactly what they needed to do. This is the big fight. This is the one they needed to get right because it had a lot of sort of kind of plot stuff behind it. And of course the name of the episode is perfect for this one, The Night Sky Sword. We finally see the full scope of the abilities of the release recollection of the Night Sky Sword here, and that was how Kirito ultimately managed to defeat Gabriel Miller. But it's perhaps not fair to say that, Kirito alone defeated Gabriel Miller. It was Kirito with the assistance of everyone that did it. And I think that was the big thing with this, is that they let Kirito have his big return and, be really powerful, win the day. But they've really been emphasizing that, like, Kirito needs the support of the people around him. He's strong on his own, but what puts him up to the next level is him when he has the support of others, whether that be Yu-Gi-Oh! Or in this case, everyone else, including Yu-Gi-Oh! That's what truly gives him the strength that he needs. And I've always felt like that's been, pretty well done. That, yes, he does try to take things on by himself, but that isn't really the correct path. And this episode, to a degree, I think you saw that, of like Kirito about to, he's struggling against Gabriel Miller, and he's kind of blaming himself of like, if I stay here, I'll be here for 200 years, but I'm completely ignoring how everyone else who cares about me will feel about that. And he realizes that he doesn't want that either, even though he's sort of willing to do that if required to get Alice out and sort of win the day. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Has to be the one to sort of come in and be like, no, you're Kirito, the Black Swordsman. You are the one who... You care about the people here. That's why you're here. That's why you're willing to stay behind. It's not to be selfish and just be on your own or anything like that. The kind of isolation style Kirito was him from earlier on. Much earlier on in the series. No. He's here and trying to defend this world from Gabriel Miller because there is people here he cares about, and he of all people knows the value of this because of how important Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, why he's trying to protect Alice and everyone else in the world. And that's why it was sort of significant that they had the big Night Sky Blade moment come like immediately after this and show everyone supporting him. So let's get into that, I suppose, and explain the details behind this. So we obviously found out previously that the ways Night Skyblade works is that because it was based on the Gigas tree, it absorbs energy basically into it. So there's a nice combination with Yu-Gi-Oh's sword. In this case, though, what the specifics are is that the Night Skyblade literally makes a night sky. It turns the world, the sky, into a night sky, and it's initially empty, but then gradually over time it begins to populate with stars, and the stars are basically the energy. It's one person believing in Kirito, putting their hopes in him, and so every character who does this kind of ignites a star in the sky. And so this was very significant. This was really well done in the book, and this was the bit that they absolutely nailed in this episode, was the significance of this, of here is his ultimate ability of his sword, and it is to empower him through others supporting him. And so you get your focus on Sinon, then Talifa, and then kind of to a lot of the other groups of characters present there, and then finally the really important ones right at the end, along with, of course, at the start, Sinon and Lifa, Alice and Asuna as well. This is a part where I think the novel, just by virtue of being a novel, is able to do a little bit more than what they were able to do here, just in terms of like really hitting the beats here at this point about Kirito's character arc, how the other characters feel about him. Like, we know Sinon and Lifa care, of course, but in the novel, when Sinon, of course, puts her star in the sky, we get this moment. In the anime, she says the line, and she says it in the light novel as well. That's it. This night, it's Kirito's heart. But then we get some narration sort of from her point of view. He wasn't the blazing sun. He wasn't the sort to stand above everyone else and lead them with his radiance, but he would support you from behind when times were tough. He would ease your sadness and dry your tears, like the stars that shone delicately but constantly, like the night. And that's like Sinon's perspective of like, that's what Kirito really gave to her back in the GGO arc, was that when she had her sort of big breakdown about her not being strong in the real world in the game, he supported her there. And it fits Kirito's character, is that yes, at times he can be the sort of lead character of a group, but he rarely is that character who just stands out in front and just like gets everyone behind him. It is more of a case of like he is strong, yes, but he usually tends to kind of do stuff on his own and more sort of support from behind. And I think that's very fitting for an explanation for the character that he is. That he's not the blazing sun. Kirito is the night, the stars in the night sky, and this is sort of the counterpoint to that, of like, if there's a sort of calmness to the night sky that helps support the other characters, then the other characters can be the stars in that night that support Kirito. And that's the dynamic that they play off well here. Again, I think it's very difficult to get that sort of paragraph across in animation, because you couldn't just, in the same scene that they had, have Sinon basically read out like a 3 or 4 line soliloquy basically about Kirito. That maybe wouldn't have fit. So they would have had to have done it by doing like a Sinon flashback to her and Kirito in GGO as she narrates roughly that over it. But would that have distracted and taken you out of the fact that in the animation they have to show the night sky stuff happening like relatively quickly? They can't linger on, here's the significance of this character doing it and this character. Instead, they just have to sort of say their piece, their star goes up in the sky, and move on. With Lifa, of course, they address the fact that, of course, like they're related, and it relates to the whole arc that they've had together. Before he discovered the truth on his own, he must have subconsciously sensed that all was not as it seemed, that his mother and father weren't his real parents. From the moment Sugaha was old enough to understand, Kirito was plagued by a shadow of loneliness and isolation. He didn't try to form close ties with anyone else, and the moment it seemed like friendship was about to bloom, he destroyed it himself. That tendency led him into an online game obsession, and the fact that his obsession gave him the role of the hero who saved SAO didn't seem like an ironic coincidence to Suguha. She didn't think it was a preordained salvation for him either. It was a path that her brother chose for himself, one that he would not run from, but strive to bear as best he could. That was the strength Kirito possessed. This night sky was nothing less than proof that Kirito chose to shoulder the burden of the world and everyone who lived in it. And I think those two things are kind of, to me, significant in terms of those characters showing how much they understand Kirito. But like I said, that's very difficult, I think, to get across in animation, and that probably above everything in the Alicization arc, and especially the adaptation of the Alicization arc, has been the thing of that novel narration is very difficult to get across in animation. The detail of the narration is often what's lost when you present it as animation. And I think that's just what books offer. You get more details because you can just write something as the narration. But yeah, they other than that, they go through the exact same characters they do. Otherwise, we have Sheita and Iskan. You have Renly, Ronye, Sortaliena, TS, and so on. And of course, Renly and TS are holding hands, setting up that relationship, of course. And those are really nice, just, Sheita and Iskan both understanding what true strength is. And I think especially for those two characters to acknowledge that strength is more than just sort of anger and pure, literal strength, that they immediately then move to put their hopes into Kirito as well. Really speaks kind of highly of the growth that those characters have gone through, even though they're more of the minor characters in the arc. And then, you cut through a lot of the other characters as well, which, I think really work to just highlight that this is this end of the world event, basically. Things are going wrong, and here's the guy responsible for it. And there's this night sky, everyone puts their hopes into Kirito, and they empower his attack. And the idea here is that it's not sort of spatial resources that's being absorbed here, but sort of this one is literally absorbing sort of people's obviously the whole point of Alicization is all about the power of your soul, incarnation soul. That's why the power of incarnation is such a key ability, which is basically the core of Kirito versus Gabriel Miller. It is Kirito's understanding of incarnation versus Gabriel's understanding of incarnation, and what powers each of them. They both understand the systems really, really well, but one's incarnation comes from sort of willpower, the emotion, the hope of things, and that's Kirito. The other comes from sort of the absence of anything, so it's just the kind of power in a way of nothingness. And because of that, incarnation doesn't really work on Gabriel Miller, as we've seen before. So, that I think worked well, but this was the idea of, because he's nothing, why is he nothing? He's nothing because he fears sort of the emotions that people have and where they can lead you, whereas Kirito no longer does. He's no longer that isolated character anymore. He has all of these people, as the night sky shows now with all the stars in it, supporting him. And so this is basically, it's the idea is that it's sort of collecting a piece of almost everyone's soul, everyone's incarnation, and channeling that into his power and abilities, which is why he immediately heals himself, as we see, and we go into the Starburst stream. Now, this is the thing that, again, another little detail that is gotten into in the novels, but not quite, doesn't come across as well in the animation, and that is that Starburst Stream is a 16-hit combo, but Kirito performs a 17-hit combo, because he does the first 15 normally, but as he's about to deliver the final 16th blow, of course, Gabriel Miller, shoots out, chops his arm off. But as the sword is flying, of course, we see Yu-Gi-Oh step in. He holds onto the sword and blocks Gabriel Miller's other attack. So Yu-Gi-Oh's block is the sort of 16th attack, but the power of this world Kirito delivers a 17-hit Starburst stream and delivers the final blow with his other hand. Very, very significant, I think. That the whole episode, is about Kirito's sword, but the way things worked out, he was about to deliver the final blow with Yu-Gi-Oh's blade, but he actually does it with his own. That's the significance here of, like, again, finally, the last time of kind of Yu-Gi-Oh supporting Kirito, and I think that really, really worked. Now, I don't think that this is going to be a thing where they'll just forget about it, but immediately after, the defeat of Gabriel Miller, the light novels do go into sort of a why this is actually the end of Gabriel Miller thing, and like we actually see his final moments, whereas here he just explodes. I think they've just chosen to show us that at a different moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they just started off the next episode with the Gabriel Miller kind of scenes that we didn't get here. I would be very shocked if they choose to leave these scenes out. I'm just a little bit worried because they have left out important scenes from the last few episodes, but in this case, I think just the way the character's been set up, he is the main villain. I don't see how you don't do this, given that they showed the other part of Gabriel Miller's backstory that this sort of finale for the character is going to relate to. So I think they're just waiting for starting next episode, separate than the conclusion to the fight, we'll get the end of Gabriel Miller properly. So, Kirito has defeated him here, but the question, of course, is, oh, he's defeated him, why doesn't Gabriel Miller just log out of the game and stuff like that? But we'll see why Gabriel Miller's been actually defeated for good here. And then, the other side of the episode is, of course, that we see Asuna uses her powers as Stacia to make a giant bridge up to the World's End altar. It's the final stairway that they have to get through to get Alice out of the game. And, I just like the bit at the start, like, Alice wants to sort of tell Kirito so much because it's her first time seeing him back in so long. But Asuna is very focused. Kirito will deal with him. The two of us have to get you out, otherwise this will be for nothing, basically. And so we cut back to that at the end. Of course, we have their involvement with the Night Sky Blade attack, in that we see Alice directly give her hopes as well to Kirito, and hers is like, they make it quite literal in her case. It almost seems like a physical star that she kind of puts out into the sky to really highlight that even though she is this artificial fluke like she says, her feelings are just as real as everyone else, and she forms such a powerful sort of beacon for Kirito. And then I think it's kind of interesting with Asuna in that they specifically don't really linger on her that much, but she is the last one we linger on before we go, with the idea that she really knows what Kirito's doing, and that she has to get Alice to the World's End altar as soon as possible. So she doesn't even stop to look back. She just takes a quick glance back to show her support and is straight back up there. And I think that was very fitting, especially given how the episode ends, which, of course, is that Kirito, after defeating Gabriel Miller, goes up to the World's End altar, and he's happy. He's happy that Asuna and Alice have gotten out. But he suddenly realizes, it all hits him, that, oh, I'm going to be in here for 200 years. I'll probably never see any of them ever again. And it just hits him, and he breaks down. And it's a powerful moment because, it's like it's the big return for the character, but then he was immediately given this thing of like, you got to do this quick. And of course, Miller was so much more powerful than he thought he was. And the time was all used up, and now he's stuck again, basically. But big reveal. This was the setup from like some of the Kirito Asuna scenes from the last episode. She has stayed behind, and if there was anyone having any doubts about Kirito and Asuna's relationship, here it is. She stays behind with him for 200 years in the underworld, like couple goals right there. So obviously there's a conversation to happen. We'll see if they focus on it or anything like that, because obviously this is where like the whole volume situation gets really complicated and so on. And I don't want to spoil the whole situation for anyone, but you know, I suspect we'll get at least a little bit more with Kirito and Asuna right here, and as well as seeing the Gabriel Miller final scene. And I think most of next episode will be Ocean Turtle stuff before we transition into the quite long epilogue to this arc that, you know, we'll see what they do with the big point here, the big question, because they've seemingly, of course, this is the dynamic here, 3 episodes to go. How they've seemingly like set in stone. They're stuck in there for 200 years. And while, yes, it'll only be a few minutes on the outside, they've also told us that their souls won't live that long. So how's this going to work? So I suppose it's going to be very significant what they say about the timing of how quickly they can stop the maximum acceleration phase, how quickly they can get to the place to actually do it. Because of course, like Crater and some of the other guys who came in with Gabriel Miller are still there, but you know, we know Kikuoka is kind of going into action shortly and so on. So there's still quite a bit to happen, but yeah, I really like that moment of just hope at the end of just Kirito. He's not going to be alone, and Asuna wasn't going to lose him again. And I like that from her perspective. Like, you can sort of tell that she could sense from the fact that he didn't fill her in on most of the Kikuoka conversation that something like this was probably going to happen. So she logs Alice out, as was her mission, but she's staying behind with him so that she doesn't have to like lose him again, like what happened in the first half of this arc. And that's just really great to see. I really did like that. And yeah, that's where we ended. So yeah, overall, like I really liked the episode. Like, I didn't really talk much about the animation of the Kirito Subtilizer fight. It was really, really well done. Like, the fight itself, even from the light novel, like, it isn't like crazy long. SAO fights typically are never particularly lengthy affairs like they are in like most manga, because it's a light novel. They do get through the action quite quickly. And it was to be expected, like, such powerful characters who are able to damage each other like that. Of course, it's going to come down to a few key blows, like it typically always is in SAO. You know, Gabriel Miller's personality as a villain, I suppose, is maybe something that's up for debate. But I think they've gotten across in general this idea that he is this empty character, and the fact that ultimately when his body sort of gets, you know, destroyed, basically, he does just become sort of the embodiment of emptiness, and that even his personality sort of disappears to the point where the only thing he's saying is null, as in nothing. And it is this sort of it's basically the sort of clash of everything versus nothing is kind of the idea of this fight here. They both know incarnation, but it comes from different places. One is sort of inspired by hope and willpower, the other just from absolute nothingness and almost the fear of emotions and so on. And again, with Gabriel Miller, you have to remember that his whole thing is that he oddly is obsessed with souls and what someone's soul actually is. But surprisingly, he knows very little about sort of his own soul, his own feelings, and that's why he is empty and tries to understand souls on such a sort of technical level and not at all on an emotional level. And is it the most deep villain ever? Not exactly, but I think his powers fit perfectly for this whole incarnation world type thing. Someone who is immune to the extent of power that Kirito can bring. Anyone else would be overwhelmed by the amount of power Kirito has, but not him, because he basically absorbs your typical power. So I definitely did appreciate that quite a lot. But yeah, that's been the episode. I am very intrigued to see exactly how, I think especially the next episode plays out, because I'm assuming they're going to sort of maybe like start and end with like some Kirito Asuna stuff, but most of the body of the episode is going to be ocean turtle stuff with Higa, Kikuoka, Rinko, everything going on there. And then maybe some cut-asides to other stuff going on. But yeah, we're in the final 3 episodes, so that's notable, but we'll see exactly how they execute on it. But yeah, that has been my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.